this is a loop suppose, and let us name this as A, B, C, D, and let us suppose that the current is flowing through the loop in this direction, like this. Suppose the current is I, right? Now this is a loop ABCD with with current I flowing through it in anti-clockwise direction, right? Let us suppose that there is a magnetic field. Suppose we placed a magnetic field north and south. We have placed two bar magnets. So this loop will be inside the magnetic field. Let us suppose that the direction of magnetic field is this, north, south. So the direction of magnetic field will be from north pole towards the south pole. So suppose here it passes like this, B, okay, then this is B, and here it is B, and here also it is B. So the magnetic field is crossing the loop. Okay. Let us suppose few more things. That suppose the normal to the coil, suppose this one, it makes an angle theta with the direction of magnetic field. Suppose normal to the coil, this is the normal, suppose we can name it as, suppose N dash is the normal to the coil, okay, and it makes an angle theta with the direction of magnetic field. Similarly here also, this is normal M dash and makes an angle theta with the direction of magnetic field. And let us suppose that the coil itself makes an angle alpha with the magnetic field. Alpha is the angle made by the plane of the coil with the direction of magnetic field. Theta is the angle made by the normal to the plane of the coil. This is perpendicular to the plane of the coil with the direction of magnetic field. Okay. Now we will find out the various forces acting on the coil due to the current flowing through it and when the coil is placed inside the magnetic field. So we assume that here we have a magnetic field, so I am removing this. No need of showing these magnets. It is understood that there is a magnetic field here. Okay. Now we take this branch AD. Okay. One more thing we can suppose here, that let AD equals to BC equals to B, the breadth of the coil, width of the coil, and AB equals to CD equals to L, the length of the coil. This is width of the coil. So we have few things. This is, they are breadth, these are length. Alpha is angle between coil and B vector. Theta equals to angle between normal to coil and B vector. We have few things we have supposed here. And the current I is flowing through the coil. Okay. Now AD. First of all, look at this AD branch. The current is passing through AD and there is a magnetic field. So what will happen? A force, magnetic Lorentz force, will act on this branch AD. And how much will be that magnetic Lorentz force? It will be equal to, let us suppose here the force is F1 is equal to I, and this length is B, ILB sine theta. For L you will write B and capital B sine theta. Now theta is the angle made with between IL vector and B vector. Here I don't confuse with IL vector. IL vector we were using for the current element. Here L represents this length. Okay, but I will speak it like this. This part is your IL vector. For inside the formula, if you will go refer to the formula, you will find that formula for force is ILB sine theta. This IL here is IB because L is replaced by B here. Then you have the magnetic field B, and sine this theta is angle between IL vector and B vector. So IL vector is this one is IL vector, and this is B vector. So the angle between them is this total angle, and this total angle this is 90 and this is theta. So sine 90 plus theta. Okay. In suppose you could have said that this angle is also the angle between IL vector and B vector. But when you look at the angle, your vectors must be either coinitial or coterminal. If you suppose take this angle, this as IL vector, then the direction of this IL vector is this, and the direction of B vector is this. So they are not either the coinitial or coterminal. Here the head of this vector is touching the tail of this vector, so you cannot consider that angle as the angle between IL vector and B vector. Okay, otherwise you could have said that alpha is the angle between IL vector and B vector. What you have to do is you will have to make the vectors coinitial. So you cannot take this length as IL vector, you will take this as IL vector. Now they are this one and this one, they are coinitial. This is the angle between them, that is 90 plus theta. So IBB sine 90 plus theta, and sine 90 plus theta is cos theta. So IBB cos theta. Right, this is your F1. Now what will be the direction? For direction we have Fleming's left hand rule. Now this is field, this is current, this is force. Now current is this direction. Okay, it is like this, right? And the field is crossing it. Means if suppose we consider, let me just give me a second. Okay, it is this way. This is your coil, and the magnetic field is crossing it like this, right? So the current here is moving this way. This is your D, A, B, C, D. Okay. Now the current is coming this direction, so you will point this finger in this direction. Your magnetic field is crossing, so it should be like this. Then the force will be, you can see that it is upward. So it means that the force acting on branch AD will be upward. This is F1 vector. Okay, so F1 vector is this much and acting upward. Now we find out the force at BC part. BC. Let us suppose that this is F3. Okay, or you can take F2 also, doesn't matter. It is your choice. Now here the force F2 is IBB. That will remain same, and sine. Now here the IL vector is this one. You will take this one, and B vector is this one, right? Okay. For time being, you don't consider angle alpha. You have, suppose you have only angle theta, then you can say that the angle between IL vector and B vector is 90 minus theta. Or you can say 90 minus theta is alpha. But since we are finding the values in terms of theta, so we can write for alpha, you can write 90 minus theta, because alpha plus theta equals to 90. So you have the angle between IL vector and B vector equals to alpha, but since we obtained the formula F1 in terms of theta, so we can write sine 90 minus theta. Sine alpha will be replaced by 90 minus theta, and you get here IBB sine 90 minus theta is cos theta. Sine 90 minus theta is cos theta. Now what is the direction? Direction is this one, F2, right? Now you will find that both the forces are equal and opposite, equal and opposite, and they are acting along the same line also. Okay, so it means that these forces will cancel each other. So how much is the net force acting on the coil due to these two forces? The net of these two forces, the resultant of these two forces is 0. The net force because of these two forces is 0. The net torque because of these two forces is also 0, because for torque to generate, the lines of action of the forces must be different. Here the line of action is same, so no torque, no force for these two parts. Okay, so in case of AD and BC, no force, no torque. Okay, so it means that coil will not have undergo a linear displacement like this, nor it will turn like this. It will not rotate also. Torque is responsible for the rotation, force is responsible for the linear displacement. So the coil cannot move linearly, that up and down, and also it cannot rotate like this. Okay, so both are not possible. Now we move on to the remaining two branches. Okay, now AB, here the force will be how much? It is F, suppose 3 equals to I. Now this length is, this was L, so, and this was how much? It was B. So I, L, B sine. Now how much is angle between IL vector and B vector? Now IL vector is this. Okay, and B vector is this. What is the angle between them? It is 90. So it is ILB, right? So the force acting on this branch is ILB. Now what is the direction? Direction, B vector is like this. Okay, IL vector is this one, downward. So the force is perpendicular to the board and outwards. So the direction of force here is perpendicular to the board and outwards. This is F3. Okay, perpendicular to the board and outwards like this. Okay, now you have CD, F4. How much? ILB, and here IL is this, right? And B is this. So angle is again 90. So it is sine 90 is equal to ILB. This is your force. What will be the direction? By using Fleming's left hand rule, the direction would be perpendicular to the board and inward. Perpendicular to the board and inward. Perpendicular to the board and outwards. Okay. So we have equal and opposite forces on the two branches. Okay. And their lines of action are different. Let me tell you once again that how the lines of action will be different. Suppose this is your coil. Now, the force on this branch is ILB and like this. Okay. The force on this branch is ILB and like this. Now you can see that the line of action of this force is this one. Okay. And the line of action of this force is this one. So they are not same line of action. They are at different points. So here, in this case, net force is 0 because the force is equal and opposite. So net force is equal to 0, but net torque is not equal to 0 because the lines of action of the forces, equal and opposite forces, are different. The lines of action are different. So net torque is not 0, however net force is 0. What this means that coil cannot move linearly like this, but it can rotate like this. Okay, it can rotate here but cannot move like this. This is the meaning. So now we will obtain that how much is the torque acting on the coil. So how much force is acting here on the coil? Then the force acting on these two branches are F3 and F4, which are both equal to ILB. Okay. Now I make a figure here. If suppose you look at the coil from the top, if you take the top view of the coil, this is your coil from the top, this one, okay, and this length is B. You are looking the coil from the top, right? This was the coil, so I am looking now like this, okay. At this end, this end, A end, suppose this is A, this is B, sorry, not B, it is D, this is D, okay. So at A, what is happening? The force is in one direction, and how much is that force? ILB. How much is force here? It is like this, ILB. The forces are like this, okay. The direction of magnetic field is this, and the angle between these two, you can say, we can draw a perpendicular, this one n dash, this angle is theta, okay. Now these are my lines of action. The line of action of this force is this, the line of action for this force is this. So how much is torque? What is the formula for calculating torque? It is either force multiplied by perpendicular distance between forces, okay. So either force is ILB, any of the forces you take, ILB, and perpendicular distance between the forces, I draw the lines of action of the forces, and this is suppose your M, then your DM is the perpendicular distance between the forces, okay. DM length is the perpendicular distance between the forces. Now if this angle is theta, it means that this angle will be theta, this angle will be 90 minus theta. So this angle will be 90 minus theta, and if it is 90 minus theta and this is 90, so this angle will be theta. Once again, this angle is theta, this angle is 90 minus theta, so this angle is 90 minus theta, alternate angles, and if this is 90 minus theta and this is 90, then their sum must be 180, so this angle must be theta. So can you write DM upon AD is equal to opposite side by hypotenuse equals to sine theta. So DM is equal to B sine theta. DM equals to B sine theta. So you can write the formula. The formula will change here, and you get torque equals to ILB into B sine theta. B sine theta, right? ILB and DM equals to B sine theta from this figure. Now you can write ILB B sine theta, L and B. So length into breadth will become area. So it is IAB sine theta, right? I into A is area of the loop, B sine theta. Now this you can say, you can write like this. So AB sine theta, you can write IA vector cross B vector. This is your torque vector. So this is your scalar form, or you can say the magnitude form, and this is your vector form of the torque. Okay. What will be the direction of torque? Torque direction will be given by the right hand thumb rule or right hand screw rule, because you are getting it with the cross multiplication of two quantities. So torque vector will be perpendicular to both IA vector and B vector, and the direction will be given by the right hand thumb rule. Okay. Now this IA vector, in your next chapter you will come to know about a term which is called as magnetic dipole moment. Okay, and it is denoted by M. Okay, this term is in your next chapter, chapter number 5. So for the time being, you just consider this as a term. There is a term called as magnetic dipole moment. So this torque is equal to M vector cross B vector. This is your formula for torque acting on the coil carrying current I. Okay. I think this must be clear here. Okay. Now few things to be remembered are, first thing is, suppose the coil has n turns. If the coil has n turns, number of turns, suppose I denote it by capital N. Suppose the coil has capital N turns, then torque acting will be equal to NIAB sine theta. Simply this formula will be multiplied by N, right? If the coil has N turns, then the formula will be multiplied by N simply, okay? And suppose if what I have formula here, the formula is IAB sine theta. This is the formula in terms of theta. What is theta? Theta is the angle between the normal to the coil and the direction of magnetic field. Suppose I want to change this formula in terms of alpha, then it will be IAB sine 90 minus alpha, and this will be IAB cos alpha. This is torque. Now you will have to remember here one thing, that in numerical, when you are given with the numerical, you will have to means properly observe that which angle is given to you. If you are given with the angle between the normal to the coil and the direction of magnetic field, then you will have to use this formula for solving the numerical. And if suppose the angle given is in between the plane of the coil and the direction of magnetic field, then you are supposed to use this formula. So both the formulas are okay, but they will be used as per the condition of the numerical. Okay. Okay, next is the application of this phenomena, and that is moving coil galvanometer. Moving coil galvanometer. Okay, the application of this formula that we just now obtained. So this moving coil galvanometer, this is also called as American type of galvanometer, and it was first designed by Kelvin. And later on was improved by D. Arsenault. It was designed originally by Kelvin, but later on was improved by D. Arsenault and is also called as American type of galvanometer. Okay. Now, the principle is the same principle that the same phenomena that we studied just now is the principle for the working of this galvanometer, that when a current passes through a coil, when current passes through a coil placed in a magnetic field, it exerts torque on it and the coil rotates inside the magnetic field. That is the working principle of this moving coil galvanometer. Okay. Now next is construction. Okay, I will I will explain the construction one by one. So first of all, there is a non-metallic frame like this. There is a non-metallic frame, and the coils of wire are made on this non-metallic frame. Means wire is wound on this. Okay, so several turns are made of wire here on the non-metallic frame. Now there is a soft iron core cylinder inside it. Placed a soft iron core cylinder inside. Now what is the reason of placing this soft iron core is to intensify the magnetic field here. When we place a soft iron core, that this part is also again included in your 5th chapter, that the soft iron has a property that it is considered as a ferromagnetic substance. Now ferromagnetic substances are those which get magnetized strongly when they are placed in a magnetic field. They strongly get magnetized, right? So what happens when we place this soft iron core here, it strengthens the magnetic field here in this region. It will strengthen the magnetic field. Okay. So this is the reason of placing this soft iron core. Now this arrangement is kept inside a magnetic field. Okay, this is the magnetic field. Like this. So suppose one pole is north and one is south. So this coil, this means the several turns of wire which are bound on a non-metallic frame having a soft iron core cylinder inside it is placed inside a magnetic field here. Okay. Now this is suspended with the help of a wire through a torsion head. There is a support. Torsion head means it's a kind of support. With the help of this support, it is suspended in the air, and just to balance so that it do not vibrate, it is connected here with the help of a hairline spring. Like this. This is a hairline spring. This is a phosphor bronze wire. Okay, why we are taking a phosphor bronze wire, that we will discuss later on in this topic only. These are magnets. This is coil. Okay, this is your hairline spring, right? This is the base. Now this is enclosed inside a chamber like this. This whole arrangement is enclosed inside a chamber so that it do not get affected by the presence of air. There should not be any viscous drag. Just to protect it from air or surrounding air, we enclose it inside a chamber, non-magnetic chamber. Okay. Now this part here we have a this we call as binding screws P1 and T2. These are two binding screws. Binding screw. Okay, binding screw means you will connect the circuit here. You will suppose you want to introduce this arrangement into your circuit. You want to measure the current, small current, or you want to detect the presence of current in the circuit. So these two ends will be connected together. Now one end, this current will move like this, then it will pass through here, then flow through the coil, but then through the hairline spring, and here it will come to T2. This way the arrangement, the circuit will be completed. Okay, current moves like this, then here comes, then moves through the coil, then through the hairline spring, comes here, and then T2. This way it is connected in the circuit. Now the whole arrangement, this arrangement is placed on a base, and it is having four leveling screws. These are leveling screws to level the position of this galvanometer. Okay, so these are various. There is also that initial moving coil galvanometer was having a concave mirror here. Concave mirror here, and with the help of that concave mirror, that twist in the concave mirror, we used to detect that how much current is flowing through the circuit, whether the current is increasing or decreasing. With the help of that we used to observe. Okay, just for the observation purpose we have this concave mirror here. Okay, nowadays what happens in this new type of galvanometer, which is very much based on this one, just slight improvement in this arrangement. What happens is, instead of this concave mirror, we attach this cylinder here. This cylinder, we attach this cylinder with a needle, and that needle moves on the on a scale, and with the help of yes, so with the movement of that needle over the scale, we find out that how much current is flowing through the circuit. So this is the construction of this moving coil galvanometer, right? Now next is the working. Okay, let us suppose that when we pass the current through it, now what will happen actually here, when we will pass the current through this T1 and will move through the circuit, when the current will pass through the coil, there will be some deflecting torque acting on the coil. Okay, a deflecting torque would be acting on the coil. Let us suppose that, okay, let us find out that how much will be that deflecting torque. Deflecting torque means which will try to rotate the coil, this one, which will try to move the coil. So that deflecting torque will be given by NIBA cos alpha. Suppose this coil turns. Now as the coil will turn, there will be some twist in this phosphor bronze wire, and that twist will try to oppose the motion of the coil. Now at equilibrium, what will happen? Suppose it attains the equilibrium after an angle alpha, after rotating through an angle alpha. See what is happening, that when you pass the current through this coil, there will be a deflecting torque which will try to rotate the coil. Now there is a phosphor bronze wire. As the coil rotates, there will be a twist in the wire. Now that twist will exert some restoring torque, will try to bring that back, will try to bring the coil back to its original position. Now as the twist increases, this restoring torque will become stronger and stronger, and at equilibrium point this restoring torque will become just equal to the deflecting torque, and in that condition the coil will stop. Let us suppose that equilibrium condition is obtained at an angle alpha. Okay, alpha means the angle made by the coil with the direction of magnetic field. This is magnetic field, coil turns, this is magnetic field, coil starts, initially it was parallel to the magnetic field, now current flows and coil turns like this. Now restoring torque is developing. Suppose at this angle, suppose alpha angle, alpha is the angle between the coil and the direction of magnetic field. At that angle, suppose the system comes to equilibrium. So equilibrium means this deflecting torque will become equal to restoring torque, which is equal to K alpha. Now what is K? K is a constant for the material called as restoring torque per unit twist. Okay, this is restoring torque per unit twist. This is a constant for a material, phosphor bronze. Okay, so restoring torque per unit twist. This, what is alpha? Alpha is the angle between B vector and plane of coil. Right? So the deflecting torque is this much, restoring torque is this much. At the equilibrium, both of them will become equal, and what will be the value? You get NIBA cos alpha is equal to K alpha. So how much is I? It is equal to K upon N BA, right? And alpha upon cos alpha. We get this. So it means that I is proportional to alpha upon cos alpha. Now this is a problem here. Why problem? Because you are not getting I proportional to alpha. Instead you are getting I proportional to alpha upon cos alpha. So it means that I is not directly proportional to alpha alone, right? So it means that you cannot use a linear scale for measurement of current. Linear scale simply means that for equal change in current, equal distance of the graduation you cannot make. Means, I would like to just explain this point. It means that suppose this is your needle, right? Now for 1 ampere, suppose the twist is the needle turns through this much length, this much. For next 1 ampere, it turns only for this much length. So this length is smaller, this is bigger, this is smaller. However, the change in current is same. For next 1 ampere, it takes only this much turn. So how you will have to mark 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, like this. So that you can see that the scale is not a linear scale. Linear scale means you don't have the graduations at equal distances, means equal gaps. Okay. So what you need to do is to make it a linear scale so that we can easily measure the current. We need to remove this part. We will have to remove this cos alpha from the formula, and for that, if you have observed here that here the magnetic, this bar magnet is not a straight magnet, means it is not like this. It is not like this. Which shape it is taking? Like this. It is this one. Okay, a curved magnet, a concave magnet is used. Concave faced magnet is used here. Why this is used? Because just a minute. We have this type of magnet here, right? So now the coil is here. Now this type of magnet is used in order to create a radial magnetic field instead of a linear magnetic field. If suppose you have magnets like this, then the magnetic field will be like this. But if you have this type of shape of the magnets, then the magnetic field will be this type, like this. Okay, you will have a radial magnetic field. This type of magnetic field is called as radial magnetic field. Radial means like radius. Okay, a radial magnetic field you get. So when the coil will turn, when this coil turns and the needle also turns through it, whatever be the position of the coil, the needle or the coil, because needle is attached to the coil itself, the coil is always parallel to the magnetic field. Whatever be the position of the coil, whatever be the amount of deflection in the coil is always parallel to the magnetic field in this case. So it means that in this case the value of this alpha becomes your this formula, deflecting torque. The deflecting torque, instead of NIBA cos alpha, it becomes deflecting torque equals to NIBA cos 0, because this alpha becomes 0 here. This alpha, not this alpha. This is the amount of twist in the wire, and that will remain there. Okay. So in deflecting torque you get NIBA cos 0, and cos 0 is 1, so you get NIBA. Now this is your deflecting torque and this is restoring torque. Now when you make them equal, this cos alpha is not there, this cos alpha is not there, and now you have your I proportional to alpha, right? So it means now you can use a linear scale to measure the current. Okay, now you can use a linear scale. So in order to use a linear scale, what we are doing, instead of using a plane surfaced magnet, we are using the concave faced magnets in order to produce the radial magnetic field, so that this current becomes directly proportional to the twist. the amount of turning. Okay, and with the help of this turn we can measure that how much is the current flowing through the circuit. Okay, now so we have this formula. And we write I equals to G alpha, where G is equal to K upon NBA, called as galvanometer constant. This value is called as galvanometer constant, right? There are few terms which are related to this galvanometer which we need to know. The first term is figure of merit. Okay, and this figure of merit is to find out the figure of merit of a galvanometer is included in your practicals also for a galvanometer. Now it is defined as the current which produce a deflection of one scale division. Okay, the current that will produce a deflection of one scale division, and it is denoted by G. Means this value, galvanometer constant itself, is your figure of merit, and this is I upon alpha. Figure of merit is the current that produces unit scale deflection. Okay, unit deflection, right? So how much is I? I is equal to K upon NBA alpha. I is equal to this, and this is alpha, cancelled, equals to K upon NBA. Means this one, the term which I told you that is called as galvanometer constant. That galvanometer constant itself is the figure of merit. Okay, then sensitivity of this galvanometer. And sensitivity is of two types: current sensitivity, current sensitivity, and current sensitivity is this current sensitivity is equal to alpha upon I. Current sensitivity means how much is the deflection in the coil for unit current. Okay, how much deflection it gives for unit current. If this value will be more, that for a small change in current, if you get a large deflection, then it means that the galvanometer is more sensitive. Okay, now how much is alpha upon I? We have that formula, I equals to NBA, K upon NBA, K upon NBA into alpha. We have this formula. So how much will be alpha upon I? This will go to that side, and it is NBA upon K. This is the formula to obtain the current sensitivity. Now another is voltage sensitivity. Voltage sensitivity, and this voltage sensitivity is equal to alpha upon V. For how much volt means what is the change in deflection? How much will be the deflection for unit voltage? If you apply a unit voltage, then how much deflection you get inside the coil? That is voltage sensitivity. You can write alpha upon IR because V equals to IR. Now alpha upon I is NBA upon K. So NBA upon K into R. This is your expression for calculating the voltage sensitivity. Okay. Now from this formula you can see that the sensitivity, from both the formulas you can see the sensitivity is directly proportional to N, the number of turns. Then is directly proportional to B, magnetic field, strength of the magnetic field. Then it is directly proportional to area of coil, right, is inversely proportional to K, which is called as that K is restoring torque per unit twist, right, and is inversely proportional to R, resistance of the coil, resistance of the wire of coil. Now it means that we can make more sensitive galvanometer if we change these quantities accordingly. Means we increase the number of turns, whatever means the more the number of turns, more will be the sensitivity. More stronger the magnetic field, more will be the sensitivity. By increasing these three terms and by decreasing these two terms, you can increase the sensitivity of the galvanometer. However, these two are not practical things, these two, because if you increase the number of turns or you increase the area of the coil beyond a certain limit, the size of the galvanometer will be very large, and in that case it will be difficult to carry. So these two are not practical options, right? So what we do, we use a strong magnet, okay, right? The major thing that we can do to increase the sensitivity is decrease this K. We decrease the value of K, and for that purpose we have used the phosphor bronze wire because its K value is small. Okay, there is another material called as quartz. Its K value is even smaller than phosphor bronze wire. Okay, so that's why we use such type of wires, the phosphor bronze wire or the quartz wire, because their K value is small, and so that our galvanometer becomes more sensitive. Okay, now I move on to the last topic related to this moving coil galvanometer, and that is about the advantages and disadvantages. Advantages. First of all, first advantage is we can use a linear scale to measure the current. Okay. Then second advantage is it is highly sensitive. Highly sensitive. Okay. The sensitivity is very high. Okay. Then third is no damping problem. No damping problem. Damping problem means what? Suppose you have a pendulum and you take it to one end and you release. Then it comes and moves like this. Slowly and gradually its amplitude go on decreasing and finally it stops. Means if you release it from one end and it will not stop instantly. Exact word is instantly. So it will not stop instantly. It means that it will take some time to damp its oscillation. Damp means to decrease the oscillation. It will take some time. That is called as the damping problem. So what happens here is when you what happens that deflecting torque is trying to increase the value of alpha, and restoring torque is stopping the coil from increasing the value of alpha. So at equilibrium position, it is not like that the coil is turning like that and it stops there. What happens exactly is the coil moves, okay, then coil slightly the value of alpha increases beyond that value, that equilibrium value, and the restoring force becomes more than the deflecting torque and it brings it back. So the coil does not stop at a point. What happens? It starts oscillating like this. As a result, the needle which is attached with the coil also starts oscillating about a particular point. It do not stop at a point, rather it starts oscillating. Okay, it starts oscillation. So till that oscillation does not stop, means when till the needle does not stop at a point, you cannot take the reading. It takes some time. Okay, it always takes some time to stop the needle, otherwise it will rotate, it oscillate at about a point, about a fixed position. So this is called as damping problem, but this type of damping problem is not here in case of moving coil galvanometer. The needle turns and suddenly it means instantly it stops at the equilibrium position. There is no damping problem. Okay, this is because of the presence of eddy currents. Eddy current in coil, and this term eddy current, what is eddy current, this I will discuss with you in chapter number 6. Okay, electromagnetic induction. So I'm not telling you right now that what is eddy current, but there is some current develops inside the coil which protects the damping, which causes the damping of the oscillation of the needle, which stops the needle from oscillation. Okay, so this is one advantage, that there is no damping problem here. instantly damps, the oscillation damps instantly because of the presence of eddy current. That eddy current we will discuss in chapter number 6. There is one more advantage, that you can connect the galvanometer at any point, can be connected at any point or any position. At any position inside the circuit you can connect the galvanometer. There is no positive negative inside it. You can, T1 can be connected to the other end and T2 can be connected, means you can reverse the terminals of the galvanometer inside the circuit. It has no such type of problem. Okay, there are disadvantages also. What are disadvantages? First is sensitivity cannot be changed on the well. Sensitivity cannot be changed. Suppose during the time of manufacturing, at the time of manufacturing, whatever sensitivity you have given to the galvanometer, it cannot be changed on our well during the experiment. Suppose when doing the experiment, suppose we want to change the sensitivity, this is not possible with the moving coil galvanometer. Whatever sensitivity it was given at the time of manufacturing, that sensitivity it will have. Okay. Second thing is, it damages easily with slight overloading. Okay, due to even the slight overloading, if you will pass a slight more current than the allowed value, if you pass a slightly more current through the galvanometer, it easily get damaged, because you have a phosphor bronze wire, then you have a coil, and then there is a hairline spring. So what happens is, either this hairline spring gets burned. Okay, this hairline spring gets burned because of that high amount of current flowing through the galvanometer. Even a slight higher current can burn this hairline spring. Second thing is, if more current will be there, then what will happen? There will be large deflection in the coil. If deflection will be large, then the pointer will move through a large distance. Now what will happen? That pointer will hit the end of the scale. It can only go up to a certain limit. It will hit the end and the pointer may break. Okay, so these are few disadvantages, that it is very delicate to use. You will have to be conscious about that, how much current you are passing through it. Okay, it should not go beyond the prescribed value. If it slightly goes beyond that, it easily get damaged. Okay, this was about your moving coil galvanometer.